This past week, WB, in conjunction with DC Comics, released its much anticipated film, The Batman. From the first time I saw screen tests, got a glimpse of the score, I thought this could potentially be the quintessential live action adaptation of Batman. Up until this point, I think the most fully realized adaptations of the character have been the 90s animated series headed by Bruce Timm and the Arkham games produced by Rocksteady. We have an amazing director in Matt Reeves, someone that you can tell is super duper passionate, super duper creative. When you listen to interviews, he's talking about using VR headsets to see what shots would look like before filming had even started. You look at the cast and you just see stars everywhere. Robert Pattinson, Zoe Kravitz, Jeffrey Wright, Paul Dano, Colin Farrell. Like this is an all-star cast. So much talent involved. The trailers looked amazing. The score sounded stupendous. The score is probably one of the best scores of movie history. I don't think another score has been able to pull together from the inspirations behind the character so well, other than maybe, I don't know, The Incredible Hulk back in 2009. But this score has a reference for every single inspiration behind the character of Batman. You have a bit of Zorro, you have a bit of a Western, you have some samurai references. It made Gotham feel even more real and more like a character. The Art Deco style of the city was beautiful. I loved the sort of year 2 version of Batman that we got. This very driven, myopic character that is obsessive and only believes that he's useful as Batman. When he's Bruce, he believes that he's of no use, but Batman is the instrument that can actually affect change. And seeing how that mind state progressed throughout the whole film, seeing him build his relationships with the Gotham Police Department, with Gordon, meeting Selina Kyle for the first time and that relationship being birthed. Learning all the secrets behind the city, finding out that the city he thought he knew, and even his parents weren't the people that he thought they were. Yeah, it was this very dark, gritty noir film. I enjoyed it. It was good. But I walked out disappointed in the sense of it felt like a retread. It felt regressive. When I look at the landscape of comic book movies that we've gotten to this point, I feel like we're at the knife edge where we can either go up into the stratosphere and really fully realize these characters on the big screen, or we can sort of go back to the only way this is going to be taken seriously is if we take one aspect of the character and focus on that and only do that and leave out the rest of this bombastic world that they come from. And I'm not saying I want to see Batman in multicolored bat suits or anything like that, but when you look back at a lot of the things that have been put into the character, I know Bob Kane himself didn't intend for his characters to become campy, but a lot of the reason they became that way was because writers were forced to become more creative as a result of the Comics Code Authority. We can't just be grim and gritty because these are basically for kids. If you go back to the Detective Comics number 27, the first introduction of Batman, a guy falls into a vat of acid and his reaction is, oh, a gruesome end to a gruesome man. It's very dark. And, that darkness is something that's been with the character from its inception and continues to today. And it's a pivotal part of the character, but it's not the only part of the character. There's so many different elements of Batman. There's the international man of mystery, the sort of swashbuckling Caped Crusader. There's the elements of mysticism. There's so much of this bombastic universe that is Gotham, that is Batman, that is DC Comics. And I think there is this perception of Batman being the serious character within the universe, but that's not true. He is of the universe. He's not isolated from it. And these are part of all the things that make him a fully realized comic book character. This film didn't give me that. I don't think I necessarily expected it to, but I was expecting maybe a bit more. And maybe a lot of it was in my head. It was never touted as a super duper comic book movie, but with the level of talent and inspiration that seemed to be going into it, I thought we were going to get something really, really novel. And it was, in a sense, man. This was very much Batman being the protagonist, because a lot of the times in Batman films, it's the villains that are making moves, the villains that are doing things, and Batman's just trying to thwart them, trying to stop them. But in this, Batman was the titular character. He was the protagonist. We have it in a monologue that we hear out loud. We very much get everything from his perspective, which was great. But what disappointed me was the fact that it just felt regressive. Like, for example, in the very beginning, in the opening, during Bruce's monologue, we have him talking about the signal and how it's there to call him, but it's also there to let criminals know that he's around, to instill fear in them. And we literally had that exact same scene, not through Bruce's monologue. It was through Gordon's conversation with Ramirez in The Dark Knight. But it was the same sort of thing. It was like, I turn the signal on to call him. Sometimes he doesn't come, but also to let criminals know that he's there so that they're afraid of him. So that was literally like, it was a retread. So for me, I just felt like it was regressive. And for me, I don't want that anymore. I don't think films like Joker are the accomplishments that people say they are. I think they're very regressive, and they kind of make a mockery of the comic book genre. They don't give us full realizations of these characters. They give us one aspect of them and think that we should be grateful. And I don't like that. Not to say that this film is as bad as Joker was in that aspect. It wasn't. This was a good movie. It was enjoyable. Very good watch. It'd probably get like a 9 out of 10 if I was being completely objective. But for me, the landscape set by the MCU, and I know people will complain about the MCU being repetitive and being formulaic and things like that. Even the MCU is on the cusp of this as well. Like, what's it going to give us next? What are we going to get next in comic movies? How are they going to be as true to the source material as they can be? And I don't mean being carbon copies of the source material, but I mean giving us that full realization of these characters. So yeah, those were my gripes with the movie. But don't get me wrong, it's an amazing film. The performances, the chemistry between the cast. I don't really like the outfit. I appreciate how the outfit is a homage to a lot of the different inspirations behind Batman. So like the cowl is kind of like Zorro. He has like the sort of samurai gauntlets. He has like essentially cowboy spurs on his boots. Like, I appreciate how it's a love letter to all the things that created Batman, and how that ties to the score. And like, you know, when you hear him walking and you hear the sounds of his spurs, there's like a guitar riff in the score that's like a cowboy western. I appreciate how that all works together, how it all fits. But for me, it's just like it looks ugly. The aesthetic is ugly, but that's neither here nor there. Paul Dano as the Riddler was very interesting. It was a very different take. It was sort of an amalgam of different characters. Calendar Man, Hush, the Zodiac Killer from real life, Jigsaw, I guess, as well. It wasn't really a version of the Riddler that we've seen before, but I appreciate it. It was really good. Paul Dano is amazing at playing these sort of like really pathetic people that turn into psychopaths, and that have these really pathetic psychopaths that have these huge delusions of grandeur, and very dislikable. And he has a very punchable face. I know people say that. I don't like to say that, but he has a very punchable face. But he was great in this role, and the movie has a lot of great performances, and it's a great movie. Like I said, I'm just disappointed in the way that it just seems that we're going to get a very myopic version of Batman that ignores a lot of the great history and a lot of the creativity that went into making these things work in a time period that they were like sort of forced to have. They were forced into it, essentially. When the credits started rolling, I was kind of wondering, is this a world that will be able to give me a version of Mr. Freeze, Poison Ivy, Clayface, Bane, Ra's al Ghul, the Mad Hatter? Like, this list goes on of characters that deserve their day in the sun in terms of a true to source material big screen adaptation. And I wasn't sure. Again, this world isn't as stripped down or as colorless and flavorless as Nolan's universe. When you look at Gotham, you see Gotham. You don't see Chicago or Vancouver or wherever they filmed The Dark Knight. But I really don't want, going forward, for the entirety of the universe to be based around a vigilante that goes after murderers, and that's pretty much it. I want the entirety, the full breadth of the character that's available. If the source material is there, why not use it? Why not give audiences the opportunity to see that? And again, not to say that this film isn't original in its take. It very much is. But I just think the angle, we've been down this road before. We've seen that street level version of the character before. Let's do a bit more this time. And there's definitely the potential to do this. Maybe my gripes are an overreaction, but I'm just fearful that because public perception is so built off of films rather than comic books, that essentially this version of Batman will become so entrenched, it's the only version of Batman that we'll get. And I really wouldn't want that.